Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Michael Knowles.
Man, pyrotechnics. What's going on? Thank you very much. It is so good to be here. I love the pyrotechnics. I feel very much in danger. We're so in danger here. Not just the pyrotechnics, but there's more than 3 people in the room. You're not allowed to do that. That's totally against the rules. Very, very bad. Oh, you're too kind. You are too kind. Thank you very much. If I had to pick any place to be to celebrate the 279th day of 15 Days to Slow the Spread, it would be right here with all of you. It is, yeah. This is the longest 15 days I ever had in my life. Oh, man. It just keeps going on and on. And the logic behind it is the craziest logic. I just can't figure it out. Because at the beginning, you see, we needed to flatten the curve. Remember that? And then once we flattened the curve, then we needed to still lock down to find a cure. You know that? And then, then we found a cure, but we still needed to lock down forever for some reason. I don't know why. No Thanksgiving, no Christmas, no New Year's, definitely no Student Action Summit. This is positively criminal. We are going to the gulags, my friends. Get ready. That's where we're spending 2021. How did that happen? How did that happen? In just 9 months, society has been turned completely upside down. Now, if you don't wear some filthy cloth mask on your face, if you do not walk out in a bubble, like Bubble Boy, anywhere you walk in the world, people look at you as if you're the strange one, as if you are some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist. If you follow the advice that Dr. Fauci gave at the start of this whole virus, you remember that? I know. Listen, presidents come and go. Fauci is here forever. That man, I think he was here in 1620. I think he's going to be here in 2225. Dr. Fauci, early on, though, to his credit, what he said was, the masks are basically stupid. There's no reason to wear them. They give you a false sense of security. Don't do it. And then 5 seconds later, he said, you all have to wear the masks. You can never take them off. They actually don't give you a false sense of security, though. What they do is the opposite. They give you a false sense of anxiety. You see the masks everywhere. You feel like you are living through the Black Death instead of what we're really living through, which is much closer to a strong flu season with a 99.7% chance of survival. That is the reality of the situation. I feel like I am a frog being slowly boiled in water. This is something Charlie and I actually talk about a lot. There's this scene that comes to mind from the last 9 months, certainly since the election, which is, it's a scene from the book The Sun Also Rises. Maybe you've read it in school. Scene is very simple. One guy says to another guy, he says, how did you go bankrupt? And the other guy responds, he said, 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly. That's how you go bankrupt. Gradually, you lose a little money, you don't take notice, you lose a little more, you lose a little more, and then you're broke. That is how the left destroys our country. Gradually and then suddenly. For decades, we've been in the gradually phase. The radical left infiltrated and hollowed out our universities. They hollowed out our entertainment media, which actually used to be fairly conservative, believe it or not. They completely dominated the mainstream news media. They grew the federal bureaucracy, which they actually always controlled, but now these technocrat little lab coat-wearing dictators like Fauci run our lives, and the President of the United States can't even stop him. That's what they've done. They have inverted our social institutions. They've inverted all the way down to the family, most especially the family, the bedrock political institution. All the while, some squishy Republicans turned a blind eye. Some of them even aided and abetted the transformation. They played court jester in the kingdom of liberalism. They fought just enough. You know, I'm not going to name these politicians. Okay, I think that would be rude. Like if I were to mention that some of them were like a senator from Utah, former governor of Massachusetts, invented Obamacare. I'm not going to name that. I'm not going to name him. His name rhymes with Rit Momney. I'm not going to name him, though. It's wrong. It would be wrong to do that. These kinds of squishy Republicans, these court jester conservatives, their job is to lose. They put up enough of a fight, they legitimize the regime. The minute it comes to the actual battle, they roll over. This has been going on for about 100 years now. But you may have noticed it's not always the same. The pace of this is accelerating. Not just, the masks are a great example. This crazy lockdown is a great example. But you see this in other issues. I'll give you another example. For decades, we debated whether or not to allow legal abortion. And basically, everybody agreed abortion was a bad thing on the left and the right. But some people on the left said, we need to have abortion because of, I don't know, blah, 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 to stop some other evil or something, right? But we still at least agreed this is not a good thing. Now, all of a sudden, after decades of this, all Democrats saying taxpayers should not have to pay for this. Now, all of a sudden, the entire Democratic Party, up to and including the allegedly moderate, allegedly devout Catholic Joe Biden, are insisting, they are insisting right now that taxpayers fund the butchery of these babies. That is an acceleration. That is moving very quickly. It happened very fast. For decades, we debated sexual ethics, porn and all that kind of stuff, contraception, cohabitation. We debated these things. The relatively tame sitcom, Will and Grace, was a scandal 20 years ago. Now, if you have the audacity to say that a man is not a woman, that a man cannot become a woman simply by wishing it so, you will be smeared, you will be ostracized from polite society, you will be deplatformed, you will have punishments at your school, at your job. You will be called a deplorable, irredeemable, bitter, clinging bigot and fool who has no right to any voice in our republic. For decades, virtually every prominent Democrat condemned the burning of the American flag. They would simultaneously say it should be legal, we should support it, the legality of it. But they all condemned it. It's a horrific thing to do. Now, however, virtually every mainstream Democrat regularly protests the flag, regularly disrespects the flag at football games, on television, in social institutions. That's not a narrow protest. Do you remember Colin Kaepernick? He initially said, the flag protest, the Star-Spangled Banner protest, it's about police brutality. They say, well, then protest a police department. The flag is the symbol of the entire country. Then he started protesting the Betsy Ross flag. Now they're all, I guess he was against police brutality in 1776. It was always about the country. How much more honest do they need to be? The left is now teaching in schools the 1619 Project. Absolute trash. Anti-historical trash. They're teaching that. And they say, explicitly, the purpose of the project is, quote, to reframe American history and teach an entire generation to hate their country. It is happening very fast. We are now in the suddenly phase of the national destruction. We can no longer even trust the integrity of our elections. Right now, our elections are being conducted with basically no pretense even of fairness or order. Election day, for all intents and purposes, has been abolished. It has been replaced by an election season with no transparency, no oversight, very few poll watchers. In the case of Pennsylvania, the outright, undeniable violation of the state constitution. Doesn't matter, no consequences whatsoever. Now, if Democrats manage to grab both the White House and the Senate, they promise to totally marginalize patriotic Americans for generations, if not for good. What are they going to do? Pack the Supreme Court, add new states to the country, it gives them a supermajority. You're over. You abolish the filibuster. It's done. The Republicans are done as a national party if all of that happens. Those are not the crazed rantings of the fevered imagination of right-wingers. That is what the Democrats are promising verbatim. It is very important to know exactly where you stand, because things are about to start happening very, very quickly. They already are. And what the radical left is trying to do is discourage you. What they're trying to do is trick you into despair. This is the temptation. And I completely get it, and I feel it a little bit myself. The temptation is that the Democrats cheat and steal and break the law in their elections and try, and we go out and we vote and we raise money, and it doesn't matter because they're going to steal it in the end. I totally understand that argument. However, we cannot give in to that despair. The left and their squishy Republican friends want you to throw your arms up in the air. They want you to punch your nose to spite your face. Do not do it. Do not give them the satisfaction of your despair. Do not do it. You can't do it. We have to remember, hope is a virtue and despair is a sin. And courage is a virtue too. I've often said, I hope President Trump lives a very long life. I want him to be around for a long time. I do. I love the guy. And when that inevitable day comes, as it comes for us all, maybe he donates his body to science. I want him to donate his spine to the GOP. I think that would be quite a contribution. Obviously, I am preaching to the choir right now. You here are the cream of the crop. You do not allow yourself to be intimidated by these bullies, these bureaucratic fools. The concern for the people in this room, though, myself included, it's not that we're all going to give up. I think there's too much energy here, don't you? I think there's a lot of dragon energy here. I think it's kind of like that energy that Kanye and Trump have. I think we got a little bit of that in this room. That's not the fear. The fear for us is a little different. The temptation that we all have to guard against is not that we'll give up, but that we might be co-opted by the liberal establishment. That is what they're trying to do. That with enough sticks and carrots, we can all be turned to abandon our standards and our principles and go along with the inevitable march of progress with a capital P. That maybe we'll put up a little fight, but when it counts, we'll roll over. That's what they want to have happen. This is a particular concern among high school and college conservatives. I was young once. I remember this. I call this the phenomenon of being a conservative, but not that kind of conservative. You've probably heard it on campus, where some squishy person will say, look, I'm a conservative, but I think abortion is totally fine, and I think we can radically redefine the family, and I just really want to lower taxes, and I hate Trump, and I hate Cruz, and I hate Rush Limbaugh, and I hate Charlie Kirk, and I hate all those. I'm a good one. I'm a conservative, but not that kind of conservative. You ever hear a rhino? That's another term for it. Do not be that guy. Do not become the Lincoln Project. Do not become Egg McMuffin, whose birth name is Evan McMullen. He's that vindictive spook who pretended he was a conservative in 2016, tried to beat Trump. Now he's making gulag lists of all the conservatives who have ever actually done anything in their entire life. Do not do it. That is a fate worse than death. I would rather commit political seppuku than become one of those lame losers at the Lincoln Project. Don't do it. You know, we make fun of all of these sad sacks. I understand why they roll over. Because the pat on the head feels good, and the smack of the newspaper does not feel good. If you play the court jester, your life as a day-to-day matter will be easier. You will get better grades more easily. You will have fewer contentious conversations with your blue-haired feminist cousin. You will. You'll fit in better at work. You maybe will get more promotions. You'll do better with your classmates. You'll chat up more girls. Oh, you'll get invited to more parties. I get it. I feel the temptation. You have to resist it. You will feel more at home in the dominant liberal culture. And all it will cost you is your integrity. This is the fight right now. You're in it. If you stand firm in your convictions, if you stand athwart history yelling stop, to use Buckley's phrase, if you refuse to be boiled gradually, then suddenly, you will be slandered and attacked. You will be called stupid. You will be called uneducated. You will be called evil and sexist and racist and whatever. That is the cost of integrity. That is the cost of telling the truth in an age gone mad. If you would rather go along with the left, then go along with them. Have an easy time of things, but do not insult the rest of us by calling yourself a conservative. Do not do it. If you lay down on the small things, on the seemingly trivial things, the larger surrenders will follow. If you give up ground gradually, the sudden defeat will follow. Stand firm, take heart, and keep the faith. We may lose, but we will not roll over. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you very much. Now, I have tried to leave enough time because rather than just talk myself the whole time, I want to hear from you. I think we have some time for Q&A. If you want to line up back there, you make sure you social distance. You have to be at least 6 centimeters away from the speaker in front of you. Would love to hear from all of you. Yes.
JFK, I've lost my voice, so my bad, guys. I'm raspy again.
There's too much to cheer. I understand.
Yes.
This is the largest gathering on Earth right now. There's a lot to be happy about.
Exactly. The great John F. Kennedy once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." In a time so much where we're told what our country can do for us and how much our country can help us, what do we need to be asking ourselves and looking for to do for our country every day? Because every day there's so many people overseas fighting for our country. What can we do here to work just as hard for our country, in your opinion?
It's a great question. The key here, there's two aspects to this. One is people talk about how we're going to have a great national divorce. I was just talking to Charlie about this on his podcast. There's a lot of talk about this because the left hates us, and frankly, I'm not so thrilled with the left right now, and I don't know that we all want to live together. The reason the divorce analogy makes sense is because if you go in, if a couple is having trouble, the marriage is on the rocks, if you go into marriage counseling and the whole counseling is you did this and you did that and I scored this point and you scored this point, you go tit for tat, it doesn't matter who's right, it doesn't matter who did what. If you hate each other, then the marriage ain't going to work. And I think that's the same thing here. You have to love your countrymen. The way to love your countrymen is to love your country. We used to at least have that. We didn't have a whole lot in common. That's been built in from the beginning to America. We at least had patriotism. We at least loved the country itself. Now the left is openly saying they don't love it. So that's going to create a big problem. If you don't reinstill a love of country and therefore countrymen, you're not going to be able to do anything. The other key is, and this is something that a lot of squishes got wrong for a lot of decades, is we need to have standards. We need to be able to have the confidence, the backbone, to say this thing is true and this thing is false. And moreover, we need to be able to say this thing is good and this thing is bad. I think the trick with political correctness and wokeism, the trap that we've all fallen into is political correctness comes in, overthrows the old standards. And then our response to it, a lot of conservatives for decades was, we should have no standards at all. Forget about it. Look, I can't say that it's better to go to church than to go to Drag Queen Story Hour. But look, maybe you really like Drag Queen Story Hour and maybe I really like church. Who's to say what's better? It's better to go to church than Drag Queen Story Hour. We need to be able to say that. We need to be able to have standards. This doesn't mean you have to be a jerk or mean to people. You can be very nice to people, but you at least need to be able to have a standard and stand by that. And we haven't done it for a long time. I'm seeing it happen right now, especially before Fauci locked us all in our rooms. I would travel to a lot of campuses. I'd talk to a lot of you. I've met a lot of you before. And I'm seeing that happen. I'm seeing a new courage come up. That has been very deficient. But if we can articulate a clear matter of what is right, what is wrong, stand by that, we'll do a lot to help heal the country.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas.
You too.
Hey, Michael, how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm here with my best friend Kyle, and I don't know if you ever seen the movie or read the book Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance, but we grew up about an hour from Jackson, Kentucky, And in one of the scenes in the movie, he was sitting, after he graduated law school, he was sitting with a big, I guess, group of people from law school like that are interviewing him. And when he said, I'm from Middletown, Ohio, and Jackson, Kentucky, like Appalachian region, they like kind of scoffed at him and scorned at him. So my question is, why is there so much hatred and scorn towards people like us?
Well, because you're so privileged, that's why. Don't you know that? I read Hillbilly Elegy. That guy seems so privileged, doesn't he? He's got a drug-addicted mother, he's got this horrible childhood, he's got to work his way up from nothing, but he's privileged. It's the only group in America that you're not only permitted to mock and deride, but you're actually sort of required to mock and deride, are the hillbillies, are the sort of poor white people in the middle of the country and up in the hills. That is a deep prejudice. I mean, that is a real example of rank bigotry, but it's not hypocrisy when the left does this. I noticed there's a phrase that the law professor Adrian Vermeule uses a lot. He says, it's not hypocrisy, it's hierarchy. It's a new caste system that is being foisted on the country. And it's really awful. It's really awful. One thing I will say to give us some hope is the Trump victory was in many ways, I mean, frankly, the success of that book, Hillbilly Elegy, shows it too, was a reminder that these are people, there are countrymen. It is not right to mock them and deride them. They come from very difficult circumstances. And as the march of progress moved on, and these people got absolutely the worst bargain they could have gotten, and we moved into a sort of transnational age of neoliberal empire, all of a sudden, sometimes the people fight back. And that's what happened in 2016. It's why you saw all these shenanigans, everybody coming out of the woodwork to make sure that 2020 didn't go that way again. But there is still a profoundly popular movement there for those kinds of people, and I think the GOP is obviously the only party speaking to them right now, and as long as they keep that up, as long as we don't let those establishment hacks come out and try to kill Trumpism and excise it from the GOP, as long as the GOP takes a much more coherent, traditional, conservative American view of representing the actual American people, then I think there is a bit of hope. And those very people who are castigated are the people who are in many ways giving us that hope.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should I hold it or? Hey, Michael. My name's Kongmin, also known as Korean Christian Conservative. I'm probably your biggest fan here. I also want to thank you for saying I love you back to me when I said I love you during your All Access Live on one of them. I watch your show pretty religiously, almost every day, and when you got to Friday, I was really happy, still 5 days a week. But I was wondering, I have to know, what's the secret to your smooth transitions from what you're talking and your content to your advertisements?
This is the real... I try to do this on my show. And the real reason I do this is because, you get into a train of thought. And then you got to stop and you got to read the sponsors, and that's nice when the sponsors support the show. But, either you can get kind of irritated with, do a full break, or you can amuse yourself and see if you can trick everybody in the audience to not realizing that you're doing an ad. So I've been doing that now from the very beginning. It's very important because a lot of times, I'll just be blowing smoke on air, and really the best way to blow smoke is to go to thompsoncigar.com/Knowles, promo code Knowles. You'll save a lot of money on it. So I would highly recommend that you check that out. Great question.
Thank you, love you.
You too.
That was great. Hi, Michael, big fan. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So I had a question. Something that I've really been noticing in a lot of my social groups, I'm from Southern California, OC area. So something I've been struggling with, yeah, thanks. Which you were there, but you moved to Nashville just this year, so.
I fled. I thought if I turned around, I would turn into a pillar of salt as I was fleeing LA. So I am now in the sweet air of freedom.
There you go, that's good, it's right where I'm at. So anyway, something I've been noticing in a lot of my social circles is a lot of my Christian friends are falling for this incredibly woke narrative, just caving to every system that's just coming at them and whatnot. And something I value a lot, talking with far left people, is I try and at least value having conversation with them, if anything, to just help me better collect my argumentation and whatnot, or even try and exercise some of the research that I've been doing. So my question to you is, one, do you have any research tips? And second of all, what would be your biggest tip, I guess, to try to reason with these Christians who I've known for a very long time, but who have really just caved to this woke narrative?
And I'm sorry, I couldn't hear at the very end. Had a reason with these Christians who
have fallen to this woke narrative.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this too. It's very frustrating. One thing I would do, I say this as a Catholic, so your mileage may vary, but one thing I love doing is, we got a lot of Catholics out here. This is pretty good. All right. Wow, hey, all right. That's pretty good. One thing I would do is I like to go back whenever the left cites some like woke bishop saying some stupid thing. I go back and cite Blessed Pius IX, Saint Pope Pius X, Pope Leo XIII, Pope Saint John XXIII, Pope Saint John Paul II. I quote all these people talking about how terrible socialism is and how it's just vile and evil. I go back, I can recommend a number of those encyclicals. It is not defensible. I got a lot of flack in the election because I said it is not permissible for a faithful Christian to vote for Joe Biden. And people, they were so furious at me. How dare you? How dare you say that? But it's not, it's very clear. Frankly, just on the issue of life alone, Joe Biden's abortion extremism is so radical that it is not permissible to vote for a guy like that. And we have to remember, the issue of life is not one issue among many. It is the bedrock right without which none of our other rights would exist or make any sense. So you need to hit them on that, absolutely. And I think it actually ties into what we were just talking about with political correctness. There will be a standard. There will always be a standard that we are governed by. We can pretend like, we can just live in a live and let live, you do you, don't yuck my yum kind of silly freshman philosophy class life. You can't do it. Either you're going to live by the old standards or you're going to live by the new woke standards. And I think a lot of Christians in this more liberal movement have decided that they don't have the courage to defend their own standards. Well, guess what? Inevitably, they're going to be swept back for that. So I'd have them read their Bible, I'd have them read a few encyclicals, and I would not back down. Remind them. I wish I could shake these people and say, courage is a virtue. Stand up. There is nothing honorable or dignified about rolling over and letting the cruel rape the earth. No way, buddy. Not a chance.
Thank you for showing up today. I love the podcast, and the verdict with Ted Cruz is very good as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So, two of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals are keep the pressure on and make them live by their own book of rules.
Yeah.
How can we, as young conservatives, learn to use their rules and leftist tactics against them? Because that's what gets them infuriated in the end.
Well, the trouble is, the reason it works for Alinsky when he says make them live by their own rules is because conservatives care about consistency. Conservatives care about this sort of issue. The left does not. They don't care at all. For decades now, they've been foisting the sort of, I guess you would call it the gay rights movement. And whatever you think of the gay rights movement, it's just premised on the idea that you're born this way, that your sexual attraction is immutable, that there are two different sexes, and some people have same-sex attraction, some don't. Then 5 seconds later, they switch it to transgenderism, and they say, actually, you're not born anyway, and there's no such thing as men or women, and you can kind of change. It completely contradicts what they were saying 5 seconds ago. Doesn't matter. They do the same thing, actually, with feminism and transgenderism, right? The future is female, but there's no such thing as female, so never mind. It doesn't really matter to them, because they're denying this kind of objective moral framework, and the only reality they're acknowledging is the reality of their own suffering. It's kind of the basis of intersectionality. So forget about that. There's a great line from Rochefoucauld, which is, hypocrisy is the tribute vice pays to virtue. And there is, in the worldview that we're describing, which is grounded as a Christian worldview, we sin. We sin. We don't want to brazenly sin. We don't want to say something that we don't really believe. But if you fall and you sin, that's not the contradiction of conservative beliefs in Christianity. That's the proof of it. That's the point. That's the whole thing. And so I think we have to care much less when they call us whatever stupid name they're going to call us. And because they're only interested in power, we need to be willing to exercise the political power that occasionally the people give us when we have it, and not be so timid and not be so cowardly as to give it all up. Got to use it. That's the language that the left will understand. Great question.
Hey there, Michael. My name is Cade Murphy. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So my question for you is this. The Second Amendment was originally established to provide a protection against a government that should become too tyrannical. But the question then comes is, what's the threshold of tyranny before the Second Amendment should be used for its original purpose?
That's a perennial question. People are going to say it's radical to ever ask that question. That's a question that all serious Americans have asked themselves at every stage in our national life. I'll give the answer that a Supreme Court justice gave on pornography. He said, how do you define obscenity? How do you define pornography? And he said, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. Now, I don't mean to evade your question. I really don't think that's what I'm doing. What I'm saying is there is no set, rigid, ideological answer that I can write out for you with 5 bullet points on a napkin and say, this is the moment. That is not how it works. That's how the left behaves, and that's how some misguided people on the right have behaved. But there is a conservative virtue that we've completely forgotten, which is prudence. Prudence, common sense. It's the virtue that our friends on the other side completely lack. And it's one that we should use. I can't point to you and say, when the government does this, and the government does that, and the government does this, then you have to take up arms and overthrow a totalitarian or tyrannical regime. I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is that, as you state, there is a principle of self-defense, self-protection, that is built in, and it goes all the way up to the political level. That is enshrined in our Constitution, and it is up to us to use our rational faculties and our prudence to know when that time is. I don't think that time is now, by the way, as much as I hate the masks. Could that time happen in the future? Of course it could. I can't predict the future, so I can't tell you when that is. But I do know that if, God forbid it comes to that, I really hope it doesn't. If it does, we're not going to know it's the time because of some little tract that was written on a sheet of paper. We're going to know the time because we're praying about it, we're humble about it, we are using our faculties of reason, and we're using our good judgment, which unfortunately right now is in very short supply. Goodbye, everybody. Lovely to see you. Wonderful to be with you. I can see your faces without those masks. That's so beautiful. Thank you very much.